Have you ever truly stopped and asked yourself, why am I working this hard? Why do you wake up each morning, push through exhaustion, hurl yourself into the machine, only to return to a house where your presence is barely tolerated, no longer welcome? Why do you feel so alone, even when you share your life with someone? Now confront something even harder. What if the very woman you're working so hard for is the one quietly wearing you down? This is not some dramatic exaggeration. This is reality, a brutal, often silent reality that countless men are enduring right now. And the reason no one talks about it isn't because it's rare. It's because male pain has never been fashionable. And harm from women? That remains an unthinkable narrative in the public mind. Christina Hoff Sommers, a philosopher who spent her life analyzing gender discourse, warned us about this brutal imbalance. We live in a culture that aggressively amplifies female suffering while male pain gets buried, forgotten, erased. She called it selective empathy, a world where one gender's wounds are broadcast globally and the others are quietly dismissed without a whisper. But you, the man reading these words, you know that wound exists. You feel it. The emotional pressure, the subtle manipulation, that soul-draining sense that no matter what you do, it's never enough. And let's be clear, this is not just how women are. This is not normal. It might be abuse. Let that sink in. You've been conditioned, perhaps your entire life, to swallow your pain, to protect the image of the feminine ideal, to provide, to endure, to never question. But at what cost? How many more mornings will you drag yourself into a life that doesn't see you? How long will you pretend that your silence is strength? Because there comes a moment, and maybe that moment is now, when a man must stop negotiating with the forces that are quietly killing him, and it begins with naming what no one else dares name. You are hurting, and it matters. But men don't see the trap, because the trap doesn't look like a trap. Abuse from a woman doesn't always come through screaming or fists. It often comes dressed in silence, in smiles, in sentences that sound harmless but feel like slow poison. It looks like this: expectations without gratitude, criticism without empathy, control without accountability. And because you were raised to believe that women are angels, gentle, moral, nurturing, you didn't see it coming. You thought, I'm a confident man, I'm successful, I'm respected, this could never happen to me. But no manipulation doesn't strike at your weakness. It exploits your strength. It uses your loyalty to bind you. It uses your sense of duty to enslave you. It turns your power into fuel for someone else's dominance. And the cruelest part? You blame yourself for feeling trapped. You assume you must be failing because she never raised her voice, never laid a hand, never looked abusive. But what if abuse doesn't always wear a monstrous face? What if it sometimes wears lipstick and a soft voice, while slowly eroding your soul? And if that rings true, then it's time to admit something most men never dare to say out loud. I am being hurt, and I no longer accept it. Many abusive women don't want a partner. They want a tool, a resource, a money machine, a perfect man to display, to control, to slowly dismantle. As long as the checks keep coming and the image stays intact. And here's the most brutal truth. She may not love you. She may love what you do for her. We live in a world where truth has been taken hostage by ideology, where every conversation about gender is bent to fit an agenda, where injustice is seen as one-sided, where men are allowed only two roles, the strong or the villain. But you can't keep living behind a mask. And if you still have the courage to put your hand on your chest and be honest with yourself, this is the moment to face it. Not to blame, not to hate women, but to wake up. Wake up from a love built on conditions, a love that values you only when you're useful and vanishes when you're in pain. Wake up from the collective silence that has drowned men's suffering in denial, in empty advice, in romantic lies that call exploitation sacrifice. Wake up from the cycle where you trade your youth, health, and soul. just to earn a cold nod from someone who once promised unconditional love. You might be in an abusive relationship and not even know it, because there are no fists, no shouting, no blood, just silence stretched across days like a prison sentence. Just the glare when you walk in late from traffic. Just lines like, "You never ask how I feel. You're not the only one who works, you know. You think bringing home money is enough? You didn't recognize it, because it doesn't match what you were taught about a good woman. You were raised to believe that women are kind, nurturing, gentle. You learned about feminine virtue, but you were never taught about emotional manipulation. And now, maybe, it's time you start learning." She doesn't have to raise her voice. She uses silence, a silence sharp enough to carve guilt into your bones. She doesn't need to hit you. She uses glances, sarcasm, and withdrawal until you punish yourself, believing you deserve it. And the world? It tells you. That's just how women are sensitive. So you believe it. You forgive. You endure. You pick up more shifts. You buy the more expensive gift. You stay silent when she mocks you in front of friends. You whisper to yourself, "Maybe I'm just not good enough." But if you're caught in a cycle like this, you give more and it's never enough. You're criticized, but never thanked. You open up and are called weak. You ask for intimacy and are told you're selfish. Then stop, pause, and ask yourself, is this love? Or is this an unpaid, unrewarded, never-ending job? Because real love does not make you feel like a broken tool. Real love does not come with a scoreboard or a whip hidden behind a smile. Real love does not turn a man into a servant while dressing the throne in silk and roses. What you're enduring might not be a relationship. It might be emotional servitude disguised as romance. And the first step to reclaiming your soul is naming the prison you're in. Here's a picture for you. A husband empties his entire savings to buy their first home together. And she sneers, "Well, it's not exactly a smart investment, not like what my friend's husband did." A father works double shifts to keep food on the table. And she says coldly, "The kid's not even close to you. You're never home long enough to matter." A man gives his wife a gift after pushing through weeks of bone-deep exhaustion. And she laughs, "What did you do wrong this time?" Do you see the pattern? There are no bruises on his skin, but the scars on his spirit run deep. These are not acts of love. These are needles of contempt dressed in familiarity. They don't shatter all at once. They erode. They eat away at a man's dignity, corrode his self-worth, and hollow out the very masculine presence he once stood firm in. This is not just emotional neglect. This is slow, systematic emotional erosion. And most men never speak of it, because they're taught to carry it like it's part of being a man. But it's not. Christina Hoff Sommers named it with brutal honesty: Selective Empathy. A world in which the suffering of women is tragedy, and the suffering of men is just background noise. Expected, ignored, normal. And so the pain you carry, the emotional erosion, the gaslighting, the subtle manipulations, they are never acknowledged, never spoken for, never grieved. No one writes books about your silence. No campaigns run for the man too ashamed to speak. No movies paint your pain as noble. You just wake up, look in the mirror, and wonder, am I even alive anymore? Or just breathing inside a life someone else wrote for me? You see, I thought I was strong. I did what every man is taught to do. Wake up early, work hard, never complain, hold the world on your shoulders, and ask for nothing in return. And I believe that made me powerful, that it made me worthy. But one night, after another 14-hour shift, I walked through the door of my own home and realized I didn't belong there. There was no welcome, no warmth, no voice asking, "Are you all right?" I was not hated. That would have been clear. I was tolerated. And that is far more soul-destroying. And in that silence, I faced a truth I had buried deep beneath duty. The person I was trying to protect may have become the one silently destroying me. No punches, no shouting, just cold eyes when I spoke too much. Silence like stone when I needed connection. A condescending smirk when I mentioned my pain. And those dagger-edged words, spoken like facts. "You're a man. Why are you so weak?" I wasn't broken by violence. I was broken by expectations without affection. By criticism without kindness. By demands without reciprocity. I was never chained, but I was never free. Because guilt is the leash of modern men, and I wore mine like a badge of honor. You see, the world taught me a lie. That women are always gentle, always good, always right. That to love them is to endure whatever comes, because that's what strong men do. Because that's what fathers do. That's what providers do. But I'm telling you now, that belief that half-truth can kill a man in slow motion. Because she doesn't need to scream. She only needs to withhold. To withdraw warmth. To deliver her verdicts with silence. And to weaponize disappointment, like poison. And when I expressed my pain, it wasn't met with empathy. It was met with judgment. I gave her time. She called it the bare minimum. I gave her presence. She called it expected. I gave her my entire body, soul, ambition, and effort. And still, I was not enough. And I believed her. Because no one ever taught me to recognize abuse that doesn't leave bruises. They taught me that love was pain. That patience was masculine. That to break down meant I was broken. But now I understand. Enduring unreciprocated love is not loyalty. It is self-abandonment. And if you feel this too, if you walk on eggshells in your own home, if your silence is your survival, if your effort is invisible, then maybe it's time to stop asking yourself, "What more can I give?" and start asking, "Why do I accept so little in return?" It wasn't until I caught myself shrinking at a careless comment. It wasn't until I found myself holding my breath in my own home, afraid to disturb the air. It wasn't until I realized that every attempt at intimacy came with a cost that I finally understood. This is no longer a relationship. This is an emotional prison, built brick by brick from demands, sarcasm, and weaponized words. And the cruelest part? I used to believe it was love. I used to blame myself. She's only acting like this because I'm not good enough. Maybe if I work harder, love more, endure longer, she'll change. But she didn't. And I didn't become more loved. I just sank deeper into a pit where every act of kindness became another vulnerability to exploit, where every smile I forced was a mask she praised, as long as it kept me quiet. I'm not saying this to demonize women. I'm saying it because I know there are men out there just like me, who don't even know how to name what's happening to them. They aren't beaten. They aren't starved, but they are slowly dying inside. Their soul is drained, one sigh, one insult, one withheld embrace at a time. They become a money machine, an emotional dumping ground, a puppet that must smile on cue. They think they're keeping the peace, but in truth, they're surrendering to a form of abuse no one ever taught them to recognize. I lived like that, until I stopped asking how to make her happy, and started asking, who am I in all of this? Not the provider, not the approval seeker, not the man begging for scraps of affection, but a human being with limits, with value, and with the right to be respected. I once called it love. Those endless hours of grinding, those nights dragging myself home in silence but still trying to smile, those days pouring out every drop of strength to keep things together. But then I saw it clearly. What I was living was not a relationship. It was an invisible contract, one I never signed, but was punished every day for not fulfilling, as if it were my fate. I wasn't her partner. I was the plumber, the wallet, the emotional sponge, the punching bag for her random tempers. I was the only one expected to change, to try, to compromise. While on the other side, she simply demanded, judged, and silently shifted the weight onto me. With a gentle smile. She never needed a whip. She never had to raise her voice. All she had to say was, "You're a man. Why are you being so weak?" And that one line was enough to make me clench my teeth and endure another year. Because I was afraid of being seen as a coward. So I worked harder, earned more, sacrificed more, trying to prove that I was worthy. But the more I tried to prove myself, the deeper I sank into a trap with no end. There were nights I'd stare at the ceiling and ask, "Is this love? Or am I just trying to buy affection through self-sacrifice? And what if I stopped? What if I stopped trying? Stopped providing stopped swallowing the pain? Would there be anything left between us?" If the answer is no, then I was never a husband. I was a supply system, a consumption model of emotional labor, running on guilt and unspoken expectations. We live in a society where a man's sacrifice is taken for granted, but any request from him is labeled as weakness. A woman can contribute nothing financially, share no emotional weight, offer no intimacy, and still turn around to say he's insensitive, immature, not romantic enough. And when he finally speaks up, he's accused of being toxic, patriarchal, not understanding. I used to believe I wasn't allowed to feel tired, wasn't allowed to get angry, wasn't allowed to want anything for myself. And I called that destruction commitment. But today, I call it by its real name, abuse legalized by silence. I'm not a pillow for someone else's anger. I'm not an all-inclusive service package called the ideal husband. I am a human being, with a soul, with limits, with dreams that are mine alone. And if that relationship doesn't allow me the right to be myself, then it doesn't deserve to be called home. I used to think that love was about endurance, that the more I gave, the more I swallowed, the more I stayed quiet. One day, she would finally understand. But the truth? Real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't take and take and take without ever giving back. It doesn't turn you into a bowed shadow. In the very house you built with your own blood and sweat, real love lifts you. It doesn't suffocate you bit by bit until you no longer recognize the man in the mirror. This society never taught men how to love themselves. It only taught us how to endure, to power through, to bite our tongues and carry the weight. So we give, and we give, until there's nothing left of us but a walking shell, drained of joy, drained of life. And perhaps the most devastating truth is this. When you finally collapse, when your spirit cracks beneath the invisible weight you've been carrying, she doesn't see a wounded man. She sees a malfunction, not a soul unraveling from exhaustion, but a machine that stopped working. You've given everything. You've pushed through the pain, the fatigue, the silence. You've made excuses for her coldness. You've buried your needs so deep beneath duty, you forgot you had any. You've paid the bills, fixed the leaks, held the storms inside and out. But the moment you're no longer able to function as expected, no longer a walking ATM, no longer the emotional garbage collector, no longer a fortress of stoicism, you are no longer useful. And that's all you ever were to her. Useful. Not cherished, not chosen, not seen. Just used. A disposable utility. A masculine shell to decorate her narrative. A man-shaped servant who forgot that he was never supposed to live in servitude. You thought love was supposed to be earned. That if you just worked harder, gave more, suffered longer, she would love you. But that's the lie. Love that must be earned through exhaustion is not love. It is a contract disguised as romance. It is slavery masked as devotion. And maybe the worst part? You once mistook it for home. You came back to that house, your house, and felt like a stranger. And society? Society tells you to try harder, to buy her something, to apologize, to be more of a man, to never speak of your pain because real men don't complain, because that's just how women are, because if you say it hurts, they'll say you're weak. So you keep it in. You work longer hours. You buy nicer things. You say nothing when she mocks you in public. You accept the blame again and again because you're terrified of being seen as inadequate. But let me ask you something brutally honest. Is this love? Or is this a transaction? One where your value is measured in productivity and your worth ends the moment you stop providing? If you stopped trying, if you took off the armor, sat down, and simply asked for warmth, would anything remain? If the answer is no, then brother, hear me clearly. You are not her partner. You are her product. And you deserve more than that. You are not a paycheck with legs. You are not a therapist in silence. You are not a punching bag with manners. You are not the collateral damage of someone else's expectations. You are a man, a living, breathing, burning soul, capable of love but not designed for slavery. And if no one has ever told you this before, let me be the first. Your exhaustion matters. Your heart matters. Your pain matters. And you matter. Not because you perform, not because you sacrifice, not because you endure, but because you exist. And your existence does not require permission. It does not require perfection. It does not require validation from a woman who only sees you as a service. You do not need to keep proving that you deserve love. You are worthy of love. That does not demand your silence, that does not guilt you into servitude, that does not manipulate your loyalty to fuel its power. You deserve peace, not numbness. You deserve connection, not guilt. You deserve truth, not gaslighting wrapped in fake empathy. So stand up, not with fists, but with fire, not with hate, but with boundaries, and reclaim the sacred truth you were never taught. Love is not pain. Sacrifice is not identity. And a man is not born to bleed quietly until he dies forgotten. You are not the problem. The problem is the silence. And now it ends here. I used to believe that control was love. That when she demanded I explain every dollar I spent, every text I sent, every fleeting emotion I felt, it was because she cared. That when I said something she didn't like and she went completely silent for a week, it must have been my fault. That when she cried after I asked for some time alone, surely I had done something wrong. But that wasn't love. It was psychological bondage wrapped in velvet. She doesn't need to force you. She just withdraws her affection. And like a child abandoned in the cold, you come crawling back apologizing for things you didn't do, explaining feelings you never meant to betray, trying to earn back something that should never have been used as leverage. I lived like that. But I don't live like that anymore. I used to think that if I loved someone deeply enough, then whatever they ask of me must be right. So I said yes to one thing, then another, and another, until I woke up one day and realized my entire existence no longer revolved around my own values, but around her moods. My life became a quiet ritual of damage control. How not to upset her, how to keep her smiling, how to avoid becoming the target of another invisible storm. That wasn't love. That was surrender. And then I said no. For the first time, I said no to one small thing. I pulled back not out of cruelty, but to preserve a little boundary for my own sanity. And what I saw in that moment chilled me to the bone. She didn't want my boundaries. She wanted my submission. What she loved was not me, but the version of me that bent, broke, and bled quietly to keep her calm. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a servant. And when the servant finds his spine, the love vanishes like smoke. Society taught me that women are victims and men are threats to be managed. Christina Hoff Sommers warned us long ago about this moral asymmetry where male behavior is judged by ethical standards But female behavior is excused by emotional context. She isn't controlling, she's worried. She isn't cold, she's reclaiming her power. She isn't cruel, she's just overly sensitive. But I can't lie to myself anymore. Because if a man were to do what she did, if he made his partner feel ashamed of her desires, if he isolated her from friends and family, if he controlled her finances, if he used her reputation as a weapon, society would call it what it is: abuse. So why, when a woman does the exact same thing, do we call it moodiness or emotional immaturity? That's not compassion. That's a double standard. That's manipulation. It's a form of toxicity that wears the mask of innocence, a mask that society eagerly fastens onto women. No matter how sharp the teeth behind it, I lived under that shadow. Each day I hoped not to be seen, but to be spared. I wasn't trying to be myself. I was performing. Every smile, every word, every silence, curated like a circus act, to earn a moment of gentleness from her. I became a juggler, not to bring joy, but to avoid the stones. And do you know what was punished most of all? My humanity. My needs were labeled selfish. My emotions were twisted into weakness. I was only loved when I was obedient, when I was compliant, when I became the most agreeable, quiet, harmless version of myself that she was willing to tolerate. You think that's a relationship? No, that's not a relationship. That's a regime. It's not love. It's ruled by fear, by shame, by conditional approval. A dynamic where one person rules and the other must shrink just to be allowed to stay. She doesn't need fists because she has my conscience. She doesn't need chains because she has my silence. She doesn't need a prison because I built one inside my own mind, with fear, with guilt, with a society that always takes her side. Christina Hoff Sommers was right. When we turn womanhood into a sacred shield against all criticism, we also open the gates to abuse that no one dares to name. But I dare, because I lived inside it. I bled inside it. And now I speak not out of bitterness, but because I refused to die quietly. I was taught I had to be strong, the pillar, the provider, the one who carries the family on his back. And so I stepped out each morning with this silent contract in my chest. Protect them all. Carry the weight. Don't break. But one day, I asked a question that shook everything. Who is protecting me? No one. No one asked if I was okay. No one saw me collapsing. No one noticed how many times I shattered in silence, only to patch myself up again, just so I could survive one more round. Love, they say, is about giving, about sacrifice, about becoming the man your family needs. But if love requires you to shrink yourself, to disappear, to endure insults, contempt, and control, then that is no longer love. It's a golden shackle. You are not an emotional punching bag. You are not a sex object turned utility. You are not a hostage in the very house you paid to build. If your gentleness is used as a reason to exploit you, if your generosity only leads to more demands, if peace in your relationship exists only when you surrender, then that is abuse. There don't need to be bruises. There don't need to be fists. Abuse begins the moment your voice is silenced. And it's only when you dare to name it that healing begins. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm lonely. I'm hurt. But I can take it. I'm a man. I'm supposed to be strong. Don't make a fuss. Don't be weak. But brother, that voice inside your head, that isn't strength. That's social programming. That's the system whispering to you, keep quiet, so she can stay comfortable. Day after day, night after night. No one sees it, but it kills you slowly. And the worst part? No one will ever hand you permission to speak. You must give that to yourself. Christina Hoff Sommers saw it coming long ago. She named the culture of blindness, the moral double standard where a man makes one misstep and is crucified, while a woman can commit cruelty and have it excused by emotion. The media machine paints men as the bringers of pain, and women as its innocent recipients. You're in pain? No one sees it. No one believes you, because the system was never built to recognize your suffering. And if you speak up, you're mocked. If you cry, you're labeled weak. If you push back, you're branded the abuser. And if she decides to escalate, she doesn't need evidence. She doesn't need bruises. She only needs tears. She only needs to tell the right story to the right person.